Hey, it's me again. My name is Margaret Wong, and today I really have a very, very special guest, Mr. Joe Zimmerman. For those of you who live in Cleveland and Ohio, most of us know who Mr. Zimmerman is, but since we have followers who does not live in Ohio, I would love to introduce Joe Zimmerman for you. Mr. Zimmerman and I have been old friends for years and years. He started as a career as a politician, and his wife is also very much an activist in the community. And now Joe started, I shouldn't say you started, but now Joe is the awesome president and operator and visionary of Global Cleveland. Hey, Joe, can you help me introduce yourself?
Thank you so much,
Better?
Margaret. It's great to be with you today. Thank you for everything you do for our community, Margaret. It's just an honor to be on your program. I don't have one day anymore where I don't meet somebody who says that the reason that they're here or how you really help them. Margaret, you have helped so many thousands of people in our community, and it's just great to be on this program with you to talk about these important issues that we're facing our city and our country.
Thank you. So tell me about who you are, what you have done, where you're born and raised, and what does your family do?
Sure. So thank you, Margaret. I was born and raised here in the city of Cleveland. My family is actually from Slovenia, the former Yugoslavia. My mother immigrated here in the 1960s. My father was born here, but his parents immigrated here. So we are 100% Slovenian. I was born and raised in the St. Clair Superior neighborhood, a neighborhood that I love very much that borders Asia Town. And I was very lucky to grow up on East 74th Street in St. Clair in the during the 70s and 80s, when our city was doing a lot of changes, a lot of growth. Our city was going through a lot of different things, as many cities were, in terms of really discovering who it was. And I was very lucky to have been educated in the city, been educated by the city, and I was then able to go from being a social worker, working with homeless people, to running for city council in 1997. And when I was elected, I was one of the youngest people who had been elected, even though when I left office, I felt like I was one of the oldest people. So it was a lot of fun, but it was a great chance to get to know so many people in the community, and then to come over here to Global Cleveland and work with our immigrant, refugee, newcomer community here in the city of Cleveland.
Awesome, because I still remember those days when you were very much an activist. And of course, both of us were young and poor. So we would run around and going to all these fundraisers and helping different politicians. And now you are the it person in Cleveland that people need to know, or the newcomers, the old comers. So tell me about Cleveland, Global Cleveland, who funds the program, when you came in, what happened to it, and now what's more happening to it.
Thank you, Margaret. So I have to thank you, Margaret, and I have to thank people like you, people like Mr. Dick Pogue, people like Mr. Albert Ratner, who founded our organization 10 years ago. We're in our 10th anniversary. And the organization was founded at a time when a lot of cities like Cleveland, so Milwaukee, Detroit, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Nashville, we're going through a process of becoming much more organized and focused on welcoming immigrants and newcomers, people who were born outside of the United States. So when our organization was formed by leaders like you, by people like the Cleveland Foundation, Mr. Ron Richard, Dave Abbott at the Gunn Foundation, people like our own mayor, Mayor Jackson, and people like our county executive, we were formed as a way to become that official place that would say to organizations and say to companies and say to the people who are coming here, Cleveland is for you. This is your home. And how can we help make this work for you? How do we help you with housing? How do we help you with employment? How do we make sure that you don't feel like the other? How do you feel welcome? And as you know, Margaret, immigration is a third rail in American society. And, you know, it's something that we always say at Global Cleveland, that our economy is 50 years ahead of our education policy and 60 years ahead of our immigration policy. When we look at our economy, where we are right now, Margaret, and you know this because you're an incredible lawyer, you work with companies, you work with individuals. The number one issue facing Ohio, Governor DeWine was just saying this the other day, the number one issue facing Ohio and facing Northeast Ohio is we don't have enough people enough people in our talent pipeline. And there's a lot of things going on. What can we do for people who were born here to better train them? Absolutely. But study after study has shown, including by conservative studies like Cato Institute and places that don't necessarily lean left or would consider themselves pro-immigration, that even if we were to train all the people that we have in America for the jobs that we have, we still wouldn't have enough people. Such is the way of our economy. And so what we try to do at Global Cleveland every day is to educate more people about the newcomers that are coming here, thanks to law firms like Margaret Wong and Associates. The fact that we've got now a change in policy coming from Washington, where we're going to start to see more and more people able to come and hopefully able to stay longer. And with organizations like Case Western Reserve, Cleveland State, that are doing such a great job of welcoming international students. But what we all have to do is do a better job of keeping those individuals here. And so that's the main job of Global Cleveland, which is to welcome, attract, and retain international newcomers for the economic prosperity of everyone in Northeast Ohio. And it's a thrill to do that. It's a challenge every day, but it makes me feel very close to my mom and dad, who are both deceased now. But I wouldn't be here but for immigrants, and so is the story of so many people, Margaret. And I think sometimes we just have to remind people in Northeast Ohio about that.
And on your personal journey to where you are now, how do you transform yourself? I still remember you when you were young, and I think we remember both each other, from a rambunctious activist to a politician you were so good in raising your money and telling people what your vision is for your region, and now into more an executive, giving a global message for a city like Cleveland. How, on your personal side, how do you transform yourself and evolve yourself from one step to another step to another step?
Thank you for that question, Margaret. I'll share this with you. When I used to show up for work at City Hall, and I would go through the front doors and go to my office, I would stand in that beautiful rotunda with its beautiful windows and the marble and the artwork. And I would think to myself, what am I doing here? And I would say to people that I worked with, the minute that you become comfortable with this building or with your role or power, the minute that you think that you belong here is the minute that you need to go. And so, I loved serving our community. I loved working with our different elected leaders. I loved working with people like you, Margaret, who've been just such an incredible advocate for not only the Asian American community, but all immigrant communities. And I would say everybody. I mean, you don't ask somebody for their immigration status when they come to see you. If somebody needs legal help, you provide it. But, I realized, pretty soon when I was at City Hall that the people who took themselves too seriously began to lose their effectiveness. And so it's kind of an odd thing to say, Margaret, but I almost had to detach myself internally from the work that I was doing and from who I was as a person. Because I knew who I was. I was born and raised on St. Clair Superior. My dad worked in a machine shop, near the steel mills. My mom was an immigrant who spoke with a very thick accent. And I always remembered that's where I came from. And so no matter what I did at City Hall and no matter who I met, whether I was talking to a mayor or a CEO or talking to the president of the United States, I was fortunate to have met with President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, right? I kept thinking to myself, but you're still that kid that grew up on East 74th Street in St. Clair. And so what I was grateful for that the board and David Fleschler, who's our board chair, and our board gave me the opportunity to do was to take my passion and everything that I learned at City Hall and bring it over to be an advocate at Global Cleveland for our immigrant and refugee community. Because Margaret, you know this, the city of Cleveland and Northeast Ohio every year welcomes about 3,000 people who were born outside the US into the region. And those individuals are key to our success, whether they're working at law firms like Margaret Wong's, or they're at the Cleveland Clinic, or they're sweeping floors at the county, or they're in the restaurants that are keeping our neighborhoods thriving. And so I was happy because it allowed me to take those things that I learned and bring it into the immigrant advocacy space. And, Margaret, I'll tell you, it taught me a lot about patience. You've taught me a lot about patience, about how you have to stay persistent. The last 4 years, Margaret, were very hard for our community, right? They were hard for people who look like you, Margaret. They were hard for people like if my mom and dad were alive. There was a message coming from the highest level of government in the United States that you are not welcome. And you was the immigrant or the refugee or the brown person or the black person or the Asian person. And so what I learned at City Hall, Margaret, was you can't wait. And so on 3 different occasions, Margaret, I was in the White House in the last 4 years arguing with the people who were deciding immigration policy and saying, can you please rethink this? Now, when I've told people that story, they've asked me if I was crazy because they said, clearly there was such an animosity toward our people. And by our people, Margaret, I mean our newcomers, our international sisters and brothers. But you know what, Margaret? And I don't want to get religious here, but it is not our job to decide if, it is not my job to say, well, I'm going to let somebody else do it. We're put on this earth for a reason, and it is our job to make the best of while the time we're here. And so what I learned at City Hall, and I learned from people like you, and I learned from so many different people was, sometimes you have to go into the fire in order to convince people of a different way. And what I'm really thrilled about is that 99% of the people that I see and come across in Northeast Ohio, right, whether it's Mayor Blackwell in Maple Heights, Mayor Wheelo in South Euclid, Mayor Ward in Lyndhurst, Mayor DeGeeter in Parma, Mayor Kraus in Solon, Margaret, there are so many people in our community that are welcoming to immigrants and refugees who are saying, what can I do to help? And to me, there's always one more unit of hope than there is of despair. And that's what I learned at City Hall. And that's how I've learned to take what I knew and bring it over to where I am at Global Cleveland now and work with the thousands of immigrants who call Northeast Ohio home.
Great. And if I remember correctly, and I'm sure you remember, when Global Cleveland was founded, it was really, like you said, Albert Ratner's great idea, Dick Polk, and they really put a lot of money into it. But in those days, and you were not involved yet, and until you got involved, I really feel a part of it, because in those days, you get all these reports, and most people who sit on the board and who really work there, they're like really big people, I mean, serious, maybe American, maybe white people or black people, but they really are not in touch with people like us. I mean, people who really had to struggle for a living, who had to work every day to make sure. So how did you, once you came in, slowly you transformed the culture, you transformed. Remember, we used to have that little pretty office in BP building. I'm like, who would go there? I'll be scared to even walk in. And I had no papers. And those people, you need an ID. I mean, oh my gosh. And they don't even have a bathroom that I can go put my makeup on. So how did you slowly transform Global Cleveland into a big shot, New York or, Pittsburgh organization into really very much organization that we felt we belong to. Each function you do now, Mr. Zimmerman, I see hundreds of people coming. Before, like, nobody ever show up. People who show up are the speakers. So how did you do it in the past few years that you became our president? What's the secret?
Well, I would say to you this, Margaret. I remember people used to make fun of my mom when we would walk into the Higbee's department store. And Margaret, people in America, white people have a way of degrading people of color. And sometimes, Margaret, it's so subtle, and I think sometimes that's even more difficult. They would say things to my mom like, say this word, or you're so cute, you're like a doll. And Margaret, friends of mine who are Chinese and friends of mine who are Nigerian have experienced the same thing, right? It's the accenteeism. It's the idea that somebody is different. And I remember my mom, would always want to keep the peace, Margaret, and she would always do what people said. But Margaret, my mom had a master's in Russian and in English. She was a gymnast on the Olympic level in former Yugoslavia. My mom worked in banking. Like Margaret, like you, she was a brilliant woman. She wasn't a doll. She wasn't a toy that you pull the string in her back and she says funny words. And, I would always remember that, Margaret. And I think to myself two things. One is I'm never going to be those people, right? I'm never going to be that guy that says, no, where are you really from? Or your accent is so cute. The way that we do in America where we put somebody on a shelf, right? And the second thing was, where did my mother get that patience? Because if I were my mom, my mom was so much better educated than I was. And she was educated at universities in Europe, Margaret, where like when you went to law school, there's no BS. You either do the work and you perform at a level, or you're out, right? There's no softness in international culture like sometimes there is in American culture. And when I got to Global Cleveland, I realized that there were so many good people in Cleveland that we weren't connecting to. And I'll tell you, I had some really tough meetings with people like Jose Feliciano and people like Alex Machaski
Old
and Ingrid
friends. Yeah.
Bubelies, right?
Yeah.
And these are, Margaret, like these are leaders. These are people who not only have done something, they do something. Between you, Ingrida, Alex Machaski, and Jose Feliciano, you probably have between you guys 1,000 employees. You give 1,000 people a paycheck that enables them to pay their mortgage, that gives them a sense of dignity. And I thought to myself, it's Global Cleveland's job to support the people like Margaret Wong, not as she is today, an international legal powerhouse, a giant among the law, a woman who shows other people that they can do it. You are all those things, as is Mr. Pogue, as is Mr. Feliciano, Mr. Machaski, and Ms. Bublis. It's our job to work with the day that Margaret gets to Cleveland, before she has a law firm named after her. How do we help her so that she can get there? And I say this all the time, Margaret, and so much so that the staff, I think, sometimes thinks I'm a broken record. We are NASA engineers in our hearts. Our job at Global Cleveland, Margaret, is every single day to show up and be inside of mission control, to help the rocket get set, to make sure the science is there, to provide any support for the immigrant astronauts like you that are shooting for the skies. And I say to our office every single day, it is not our job to be on the rocket. It is not our job to be Neil Armstrong. That's Margaret Wong. Margaret Wong is going to walk on the moon. It is our job to help the astronaut reach their furthest ambitions. And I'm going to say to you, Margaret, I'm going to be very personal with you because I feel like you and I have known each other so long. There's not a day goes by that my heart isn't broken. We help so many people, and sometimes we fail. We had a woman who we were working with who, for a lot of different reasons in our federal government, she had a lot of help locally, but she had to go back home during this crazy time of everything that you deal with, Margaret, so well. And it broke my heart because she was an amazing woman. She was a brilliant woman, a young woman who was doing a lot of work in engineering here in Cleveland. But because of our national government and the way that we make it so hard for people to stay here, she had to go. And it just, this, Margaret, you can't take this work personally, but you're no good in your job if you don't take it personally. So I think for me, to answer your question, I took our work very personally. I knew that we had so many people out there that we needed to build bridges to. And I knew that the one thing that Global Cleveland could do, which was nobody else was doing. Dave Gilbert at Destination Cleveland does a great job with visitors. Bill Kaler at Team Neo does a great job with businesses. Beju Shaw, my Indian brother from another mother, does a great job at Greater Cleveland Partnership, right? But our job at Global Cleveland is to be there for immigrants, is to be there for refugees, is to be there for international newcomers. And if we do that one job well, Margaret, and we support all the other luminaries that are in Northeast Ohio, then we will have done a good day.
Good. Another question I have, aside from being the visionary and the rah-rah person and inspirational leader, because as you know, you run a not-for-profit, so it's not like you have enough funding to pay people bonuses. We're always begging people to volunteer, to work, please. So how do you run the fiscal side and do the fundraising versus the mission side, which is the inspiration side? How do you get your funding? How do you beg for the money? It's so hard. hard nowadays, to get money. So how do you do that? And can you tell me what's your budget and how do you do it?
You're very insightful. So I'll share this with you. You used a word just now. You said inspiration. And that's the rah, that's the cheerleader. And I always say to our staff, there's the three words, right? There's the inspiration, right? Margaret, I'm inspired by you, Margaret. I'm inspired by the people who set up this call, who are in the studio, who are speaking, Spanish. I'm inspired by that, right? I'm inspired by the way that your mind is able to think in the language you speak, from being born in China and being in English and being a person who's argued in front of the Supreme Court of the United States, right? I'm inspired by you. Then there's the work of aspiration, right? I don't want 3,000 immigrants moving to Cleveland every year. I want 5,000 immigrants. I don't want just the Cleveland Clinic and UH and Metro to have people working in their environmental services and their kitchen and sweeping floors, doing important work as immigrants. I want more doctors and nurses and people in the labs coming from Jordan and China and India, right? I don't just want our universities like Case Western to have 3,000 international students a year. I want them to have 8,000 international students a year, half of whom decide to make Cleveland their permanent home. That's my aspiration. And then there's my perspiration. Every single day, this leading up to this call, Margaret, and right after this call, calling businesses. Hey, there's somebody who has great talent. Can you interview them? And Margaret, you hear this all the time, so do I. What kind of last name is that? Are they legal? Are they going to fit our company culture? Margaret, all the things that white male America says when it doesn't recognize something that it's not used to. And I tell every one of them real stories, Margaret, of people like Benny Bonanno at Buckeye Business Products and Bob Canner, who took a chance on immigrants and refugees coming from Afghanistan and Nepal. We talk about companies like the plumbing company that's out near the airport that does incredible work of plumbing and all this maintenance and this incredible work they do of building this organization. Their entire second shift are people who come here from other countries. And so that's the perspiration, Margaret, where every day we're doing that. And somewhere in the middle of that, Margaret, comes our communication to people, Cleveland and Gun Foundation, City of Cleveland, Governor DeWine, Cuyahoga County, companies like, Classic Seafood, Catney Seafood, companies like that are working like Lubrizol or Eaton. And we say, if you give us some support, we're able to do even this much more work. And Margaret, this. It's if you do there's a great saying in boxing, Margaret. And when I was a little guy, I used to watch these boxers in the neighborhood. I was never a boxer. I loved baseball, I loved soccer and tennis, but I was not a contact sport guy. And this boxing coach used to say in my old neighborhood, an older African gentleman, he was actually Cuban African, he's from Cuba. And he used to say to me, Joseph, the more you sweat, the less you bleed. And I think all the time, Margaret, about that saying. The more our city sweats, the more we try and work and welcome people, the more we go out of our comfort zone and say, well, here's this woman from Indonesia. She's a phenomenal engineer. We're going to give her a chance. Or I met this young man from China. He's incredible with IT work. We don't have a lot of Chinese people in our company. We're a small family-owned company, but you know what? We're going to give him a chance. The more we sweat, the less our region declines in economy and in health. And it's my job to do whatever I can to make sure that we're running as fast as we can, welcoming newcomers as much as we can, embracing the people who are here. And every day, Margaret, I miss my mom and dad so much. They've been gone now almost 20 years. And I hope one day that I'll be able to say to them that I made them proud.
I couldn't imagine not reading a book by you one day. Oh, that'd be awesome. And I'll even read it for you. I'll edit it for you.
From you, Margaret.
Oh my gosh, you are so awesome. One of the most, and now I feel good. I'm going to go back to work now. I mean, it's nice, it's nice to be with someone who's inspirational, aspirational, and perspiration. It's awesome. And here, our time is up. And thank you, Mr. Joe Zimmerman from Global Cleveland. And let's please continue the good work. We need you.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yes.
You're an inspiration. We love you. Thank you.
And don't let someone recruit you away from Cleveland. I mean, I'm just watching that day that a big offer comes, you're going to struggle with it and say, oh my gosh.
Only
yes.
if you come with me, Margaret.
God bless.
Thank
yes. Thank you. Yes. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.